after this slide, I'm going to have you set a goal that's also based off of your values. So don't worry, we're not done with goal setting. But what I want you to know is that committed action and the making meaningful goals has a lot of benefits that research has showed. A lot of this value-based approach to goal setting is quite new, so more research definitely needs to be done on this. But you can see really briefly, like it helps us cope with mental health, enhance our GPA, pain tolerance actually, and we feel much more engaged in our life and more ready to make behavior changes in our life. So now what I want you to do is we're looking at three different things. So one, we're going to look at your top value here in the process. You could have, if you want, you can write your top three. So we're going to write your top three values, or you can imagine them. Choose one, so the core value that you circled. And then we're going to write a meaningful, SMART goal. You could write more than one. I'm making this faster, but when you're doing this kind of on your own, you can go through this process by kind of doing more goals than once. I have an example I'll show you. Then we're going to choose one and identify action steps and start today. Okay? So if you want to screenshot this here that has nothing in it, you can definitely do that. I'll give you a couple seconds. Or if you want to screenshot my example here. So here are my values. They're not in order. I just kind of wrote them quickly. And I used health on all levels because it's kind of one of the easier ones to do. I have another example with growth creating change that is a bit more kind of difficult. So I'll show you both. So for example, and if you want, you can kind of work on your own as I'm talking because we're almost out of time. I'm trying to go fast. Okay, so here I chose health on all levels, and I wrote down a few goals that were important to me for all the levels that I have in my health kind of value. So I have the goal of exercising 3 times per week for 20 minutes, and this is a really achievable goal for me. And for some people, it's not. So for some people, they might say, health is important to me. I want to exercise more. Well, exercise more isn't a specific enough goal, and there's no time, and there's no way to measure what more actually means. So for me, I sat down and asked myself, well, what's my exercise routine like? On weeks that I exercise less, I exercise once a week, and on weeks I exercise more, it's like 6. So I decided to go kind of somewhere in the middle and see where I'm at. And after I try exercising 3 times a week for 20 minutes for a couple of weeks, I'm going to look at my goal and sort of say, is this really working for me? And if it's not, what do I need to change in order for it to work more? One of the goals that I'm really struggling with is journaling once per month for 5 minutes. It's not a lot, but I'm just not motivated to do it because oftentimes I forget. And it's like 2 months goes by or 3 months goes by. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to journal. So I chose this as my goal because exercise one is something that I've been, working with for a long time. And growing our own food this summer is something we've already started. So for me, journaling is the more challenging one for me. So what I decided to do, or what are some action steps to help me actually implement this goal? So buying an inspirational journal, inviting my partner who's a facilitator of change with me to participate, noticing across the following weeks, when I actually have the desire to write. Is it in the morning? Is it in the evening? Is it, after a tough, therapy session? Is it when I see my son do something really exciting? And then sort of notice those times and kind of bring a scientific observational awareness to that and implement writing times around when I feel usually inspired. So what I'll do today is I actually want to place my journal next to my nightstand in the evening, and on days that I'm working, I'm going to place my journal in my bag so that it's much more readily available to use when I'm ready to use it. Really quickly, another example with the goal of growth and creating change. So there's a few things that I want to do. A lot of these are tied to my career, but they're also tied to my role as a parent and my role as a person in humanity. But just to make this quite quick, one of the goals that I have is creating and delivering a 90-minute workshop on joy and friendships in the summer semester. So what I want to start doing in terms of my action steps is review research, write a proposal, identify my co-facilitator, and create learning objectives. And I have someone in mind with who I want to work on, but I haven't talked to her about it yet. So my next step today would be to invite Camilla, which I actually did this yesterday since I made this kind of process and practice yesterday. Or was it Thursday? Yeah, it was Thursday evening. So I invited my colleague Camilla as a co-facilitator, and we're thinking of kind of how we want to deliver this workshop. Okay, So see how this sort of process helps us identify our values, our goals, and give us direction in a way that's much more meaningful and supportive for our entire life experience. Another kind of, we won't have time to go through this exercise, but another way to sort of help ensure and enhance our goals is to identify what future barriers might be and what the strategies would be to overcome these barriers. So a barrier for me in my growth goal would be that sometimes at my workplace, there's already so much happening that delivering a new workshop, we just don't have the time. And right now we're kind of restructuring our whole program. So a barrier would be time, the restructuring, and the last one would be I don't know, interest. So a strategy for that would then to be really clear about my objectives with my supervisor. Another strategy would be to book my workshop time slot quite early and ways to really overcome these barriers. So for example, with the exercise 3 times a week goal, one of my biggest barriers is hunger. So if I eat and I don't feel like exercising right away, so how do I, well, some strategies would be to ensure that I have a big enough lunch or that I exercise first thing in the morning. So my other barrier is fatigue to exercise, and that is if I put my son to bed, I'm not interested in exercising after because I'm so relaxed. So and tired. So then a strategy to overcoming that barrier would be to exercise in the morning or at lunchtime. Okay, so kind of going through this exercise more on your own. We don't have time to do this together today. I'm just looking at the time. Okay, so fear, self-compassion, and living with a vow is kind of I'm kind of bringing this compassionate lens back. So fear, self-compassion suggests that compassion doesn't always have to be gentle. It can also be taking action and looking at alleviating suffering. I really like this image because it's quite strong. But sometimes we may put our goals and our values aside in order to um, protect ourselves or provide for others, care for others. So looking at how compassion can actually influence our ways of looking at our life and how we can provide for ourselves just as much as we provide and protect for others. Living with a vow and having self-compassionate and value-based affirmations can be another way to help you ground yourself in your goals. So an example here is that I can tell myself in the mornings or whenever I feel during the day or even my mindfulness practice, may I find the courage to grow even when afraid. May I love all beings, including me or myself. There's opportunity and challenges. May I move through them aligned and kind. May I stay present and connected with my loved ones. So I would encourage you to kind of, once you have your values, once you have your goals, once you've identified your barriers, you can even write yourself an affirmation to help ground you and remind you and to program your mind into this approach. And then what research has shown as well is that if our goals are inspiring, creative, and we have the right kind of support, usually, I mean, almost always, these goals they bring meaning and they bring much more depth to our life, and they're much more successful. I'm almost done. So courage, as I said, is one of my main values, but it's also something that drives goal setting and values as well. The thing is, when we start to live with meaningful goals, is that we are now living with our heart and living with our experiences in a much more raw way. Um, Brene Brown has this metaphor where she talks about living in the arena. So if we're living in the arena, we're doing the work, we are taking the risks, we are leading with our heart rather than sitting in the stands and taking a step back and not taking action into our life. And the thing with living in the arena is that it's much more there's potential for suffering, but there's also much more potential for joy. And when we're thinking about the arena, also, there's a lot less people in the arena than there are in the stands. Take, for example, like the NHL playoffs are happening right now. There's way more people in the stands than there are on the ice. But if we are courageous enough to live in the arena and to truly seek our value-based goals, it can be devastating when we don't attain them, but it's also incredibly inspiring when we do. So the potential for loss is huge, but joy is exponential. And then what helps us here is finding the joy in the small moments and really restructuring and reorienting our goals when they're not no longer meaningful or when they're no longer attainable or even relevant to our lives. So if you can screenshot this really quickly, here are some quick resources for goal setting and self-compassion, values, and all the things kind of we talked about today. I also added Taking in the Good by Rick Hansen. This is a mindfulness approach that helps us wire our brain into experiencing goodness. Our brain, like we talked about earlier in those three drives, has a tendency to go towards the things that are negative in order to protect us. So a more intentional practice of taking in the good is actually rewiring and creating new neural networks towards leaning into the good things. And here are some of the research references that I looked at in order to provide the goal setting structure. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. My email is below if ever you have any questions you want to ask me personally. Unfortunately, I can only work with people who are living in Canada or in Quebec, fortunately. But I can definitely provide workshops and any resources or PDFs that you might be interested in. I have a workbook on loneliness. If you want to see that, I can send it to you as well. So yeah, feel free to reach out.